Reprise de débat. The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I find it somewhat ironic that we are tonight to debate the main estimates, or in other words, the government's projection of what's going to spend this year. Ironic because there is little, if any, chance that the Liberal estimate bears any relation to reality. Perhaps what we need is to change the parliamentary wording. I think all of us on this side of the House, and probably on the other side of the House, would be more comfortable if we were to refer to it as the wild guesses but put forward by this government. Or perhaps, given their desire to legalize marijuana, we'll call it pipe dreams. Well, that will be probably a better description. Certainly, this spending program has no basis in reality. If we want reality, I would encourage members to look at the accomplishments of our previous Conservative government under the leadership of Stephen Harper. Hear, hear. During the worst economic downturn since the Great Recession, Canada had the best job creation and economic growth record among G7 countries. We reduced taxes to the lowest point in 50 years, with a typical family of four would save about $7,000 per year from what they were paying under the previous Liberal government. And after running a targeted stimulus program that created and maintained approximately 200,000 jobs, we kept our promise to balance the budget, and we handed the Liberal a surplus in 2015. Of course, we all owe our thanks to the late, great Jim Flaherty for his steady guidance over several years as our finance minister. Today, that surplus is a forgotten memory, lost to history, as are the Liberal promises of electoral reform or the small budget deficit. Instead, what we have is out of control, reckless spending, with no plan to bring any fiscal order to Canada's finances. This government may realize that money doesn't grow on trees, but it is hazy on where it comes from. Certainly, the basic economic fact that borrowed money must eventually be repaid, and with interest, doesn't seem to have made its way into the Liberal financial handbook. From what I can see, the Liberal economic plan is a simple one. Stumble along blindly and hope the Conservatives will come back and fix it in 2019.
Yeah, exactly.
The Liberals have failed to grow the economy, while people who love last will love best. So I hope we'll see that in 2019. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, economic growth forecasts for 2016-2021 are lower today than they were when the Liberals started their spending spree. The PBO says the Liberal infrastructure plan added only 0.06% to GDP and created only 1,900 jobs in 2016-2017, far lower than promised in budget 2016. Philosopher George Santayana is often quoted as having said, I quote, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it," end quote. I don't know whether he had the Liberals in mind when he made his observation, but this government certainly proves the truth of his observations. As in the 1970s, the Liberals' reckless spending is causing public debt to grow uncontrollably. Our nation still hasn't repaid the massive Liberal debt incurred then, and this government is adding to it and repeating it. I have a message for the Minister of Finance. Information, just information, that may be new to him, that he might find it helpful in his planning, and that is, borrowed money must be paid back. At some point in time, those who have been so eager to lend him money are going to want their money back, and definitely with a hefty interest. When that happens, he's going to have to find the money. He's going to look crazy for money everywhere, and no better place that this government have ever done in history but to reach deeply into the pockets of taxpayers and into the pockets of Canadians to make it for the crazy spending that always repeat and always go through. At this time, what happened? The money has to be repaid, and the obligations are there and obvious to us as we've been watching that this government has no idea how they're going to pay the debt back. Madam Speaker, you and I both know, I hope you share with me that thought, how the Minister of Finance is going to pay for this reckless spending. I suspect he knows too, but he doesn't want to admit it to Canadians. He has no plan, but and I'm sure he knows that Liberal governments has historically paid for overspending only and only by raising taxes. In the words of Ronald Reagan, I quote, "Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not," end quote. We have seen this beginning already. The Liberals have already raised taxes on middle-class families, on students, and on small business owners. Whether it is a CPP tax hike, also on youth, middle-class families, and small businesses, taxes are going up, and taxes are killing jobs, and taxes are killing small businesses. Canceling incentives such as the Children Fitness Tax Credit, or the Canadian Art Tax Credit, or the textbook tax credit. The Liberals are raising taxes, all the while claiming they're not. And that's the irony, is they're claiming that they're not, and while in fact they're doing it badly. When they kept the small business tax rate at 10.5%, while it's supposed to go down to 9%, and ended the hiring credit for small businesses, they were showing that they did not understand the importance of small businesses to the Canadian economy. Madam Speaker, I was a business owner before entering political life, so I know something of how business works. The finance minister apparently doesn't understand that increasing taxes on business is not the way to create jobs. Increasing taxes on businesses kills jobs.
Exactly.
That may be why the creation record, that may be why the job creation record of this government is so dismal, is so low, is a disaster. I suppose that lack of understanding on the Liberals' part explains why they are so eager to impose a carbon tax on all Canadians, a move that will increase consumer prices on particularly everything while killing jobs in the process. We need to protect our environment. However, I fail to see how a carbon tax that will put people out of work would help Canadians and will help our economy. Madam Speaker, I must admit that the financial numbers this government has put forward are impressive. Certainly not based on reality, and certainly not what Canada needs, but they're still impressive. Looking at them, I can only come to the conclusion that this finance minister has missed his calling in life. He is obviously wasted in this place where the true nature of his talent is not appreciated. I would suggest that in the future the Minister of Finance present his budget, his estimates, his fiscal updates, and other financial statements, not to this House, but to His Excellency, the Governor General. The Minister may be unaware of it, but each year the Governor General presents an award for the best work of Canadian fiction published last year, or that year. From what I can see, with the numbers being presented to this House, the Minister will be guaranteed to win this year's fiction award. Maybe in the future the Liberals will adopt some economic policies designed to help rather than hurt Canadian economy and ordinary Canadians. I'm looking forward to that day, no matter how unlikely it seems. We really can learn the lessons of history. That's why, after a few years of reckless spending of the Liberal government, we know that the Conservative Party will be trusted by the Canadian people to put together a fiscal policy that will be to the best interest of all Canadians. Thank you.
Questions and